Hi everybody, it's time for chapter 4 of Attaboy Sam. Let's see what Sam's going to add to his perfume today. Chapter 4. Sam, Anastasia said to her brother on Monday morning before she left for school, listen to this. I changed the first part a little, and I added another line. Tell me what you think. She had stopped by his bedroom on her way downstairs for breakfast. Sam was sitting on the floor beside his bed, trying to decide if his sneakers were on the correct feet before he velcroed them closed. He glanced quickly toward the lab when his sister entered the room. The lab was secret. He didn't want Anastasia or anyone else to know about it. But Anastasia didn't even look at the lab. If she had, it would have just seemed like Sam's old toy box to her. He had even sat some stuffed animals on the lid so that no one would suspect that secret stuff was taking place inside. Anastasia was interested only in the paper that she had unfolded. She read aloud to Sam. I'm glad that you are 38. I'm glad you're Catherine, not just Kate. I'm glad our father is your mate. I'm glad you have good body weight. Sam gave his sister a perplexed, quizzical look. She made a face. It's not any good, is it? That last line, I mean. Privately, Sam agreed with her. He thought the last line was terrible, but he didn't want to hurt Anastasia's feelings. He tried to tell her the truth in a kind way. I don't exactly understand what it means, he said. Well, it means that Mom is a good size. Not too big, not too small. Why don't you say that then? Anastasia frowned. Because I want it to rhyme. Sam examined his feet, decided that the sneakers were correct, and closed the Velcro fasteners. He stood up. Why don't you just say that her size is really great? That would rhyme, he suggested. Anastasia stared at him. She said the new rhyme under her breath, testing it out. Then she grinned. Attaboy, Sam, she said. You're a creative genius. I know, Sam said happily. But your shoes are on backwards, she pointed out as she left the bedroom. Anastasia had left for school, clattering down the back steps in her hiking boots and calling to her friend Meredith out on the sidewalk. Sam's dad had left for work. He was a professor at Harvard University, muttering angrily at the car as he backed it out of the garage. Mr. Krupnik hated cars. He especially hated their car, which sometimes wouldn't start on cold mornings and which backfired noisily when it did. Sometimes, when his dad was muttering about the car, Sam suggested the Krupniks should buy a new car. All the guys at nursery school talked about Lamborghinis, and when they played cars, they played Lamborghinis, saying "roar" loudly in their throats as they crawled across the floor. Sam did not know exactly what a Lamborghini was, but he knew that it was a good thing to have, so he told his dad that a Lamborghini was what they should buy. His dad did not think that was a good idea. Now that Anastasia and Mr. Krupnik were both gone, the kitchen was quiet. Sam's mom was busy at the sink wiping the counter with a sponge. Sam, finishing a piece of toast and jam, peered through the window for his Monday carpool driver, hhis friend Leo Lazoda's mom. All the kids call her Mrs. Lasagna. She didn't mind. Would you like it if your name was Mrs. Lasagna? Sam asked his mother. She laughed. No, she said, because then I'd be married to Mr. Lasagna, and I'd rather be married to your daddy. But if you had to have a food name, what food would you choose? I'd be Sam Egg, I think. His mother squeezed the sponge, set it in the sink, and thought for a minute. Let me see, she said. I guess I'd rather be Mrs. Soup. Catherine Chicken Soup. Why? Because I love the smell of chicken soup. It makes my mouth water to think about it. Maybe, if I have time, I'll make some chicken soup this afternoon. Then she frowned. Speaking of food, I'd better get back to work on those cabbage drawings. I'm so sick of cabbages, and I hate the smell of cabbage soup. Here comes Mrs. Lasagna, Sam announced. He ran to the door. His mom leaned down to give him a kiss and ran her fingers through his hair. She said. That new shampoo is nice. Your hair smells like chicken soup? Sam asked. Mrs. Krupnik laughed. No, like newly mown hay in a sunny field, and maybe a wildflower or two. Plus the smell of little children's clean hair, of course. It's a wonderful combination. Sam checked his pockets. He had a Ziploc bag folded in each one. These days, with such a complicated project, he needed a serious supply of Ziploc bags. Trotting to Mrs. Lasagna's car, he tried to remember the smells his mother had mentioned. Chicken soup. That would be pretty easy. He just snitched some from the pot when she was baking it. Newly mown hay? Sunshine? Wildflowers? Where on earth would he get those things? But then he remembered. His mom had said that clean hair smelled of those things. and hair was just about the easiest thing in the world to collect. Heck, all you needed was scissors. Sam climbed into the back seat of Mrs. Lasagna's station wagon. He punched Leo hello, stuck his tongue out briefly at Jessica, and ignored Rosemary, who was in the front seat pretending to read a book about lions. Even though everybody knew she couldn't read at all yet, she still got her starting sounds all mixed up. Sam buckled his seatbelt, and Mrs. Lasagna headed to the nursery school. 2 hours later, Sam found himself sitting in the big green timeout chair. He dangled his feet, swinging them back and forth, and sighed. His dad had explained to him once that even grown-ups needed timeouts sometimes. In hockey games, grown-up hockey games with the Boston Bruins, the guys who behaved badly had to go sit in a special place. Sam had seen them on TV. The hockey players in the special place, they called it the penalty box, sat there looking mad, and they watched the clock to see when they could come out and play again. It was the same at nursery school. Sam sat and sighed and looked mad and waited for the time to pass. He pretended that he was a Boston Bruin who had hit some other guy with his hockey stick and maybe knocked out his teeth. "Okay, Sam," Mrs. Bennet said cheerfully after about 1,000,000 minutes. Sam climbed out of the green chair and pretended that he was skating into the game again, wearing his helmet and big gloves. He skated carefully over to the art corner and sat down at the table. He picked up the colored papers and crayons he'd been working with before he got into trouble and had to have a timeout. He noticed that Mrs. Bennet was watching him very carefully. Nonchalantly, Sam began drawing balloons on his paper. He drew a red balloon and a green balloon and a pink balloon with a brown happy face in it. Mrs. Bennet began helping another child work with clay. Sam picked up the plastic scissors and began to cut out his balloons. Mrs. Bennet glanced over and smiled at him. He smiled back. He was being good. He was only cutting out his balloons. When no one was watching, he touched his own head right behind his right ear, just to check it out. It didn't feel too bad. There wasn't a bald spot or anything. It wasn't like the time when he was younger, and therefore dumber, and therefore naughtier, that he had cut all his hair all over his head and ended up looking like a porcupine. This was just a small clump of hair, and Mrs. Bennet had gotten entirely the wrong idea because dumb Jessica had yelled and said that Sam was chopping everybody's hair off with the scissors, which was not true at all. It was only his own hair, and it was for a perfectly good reason, even though it was so secret that he had not been willing to explain it to Mrs. Bennet. Somehow, with no one looking while he sat in the timeout chair, he had managed to get the little handful of hair into his Ziploc bag and safely into his pocket. Sam sure hoped his mom would appreciate all the trouble he was going to for this birthday gift. The soup was easy, just as Sam had imagined. It was simmering on the stove when he got home, and it did smell delicious. Sam, to be perfectly honest, had not agreed with his mother at all about the smell of babies, and he really wasn't much interested in the smell of shampooed hair. But the chicken soup aroma in the kitchen was wonderful. His mother was in her studio. Sam climbed into the kitchen step stool very carefully, spooned some soup into his plastic clown cup, and then carried it secretly to his room. He couldn't resist taking a little sip when it cooled, but he didn't eat it all. With the door to his bedroom closed, Sam knelt beside his lap. He took the bag of hair from his pocket, dropped the curls into the cup of soup, swirled the mixture around a little, and then added it. He didn't spill a drop or a hair to the large perfume bottle. He replaced the cap, tightening it carefully, and shook the bottle. The pipe made a clunking sound. The tissues that had contained the baby smells were now a dark purple mass on the bottom of the bottle. The hairs floated a bit, and he could see, holding the bottle up to the window, that he had captured 2 noodles from the chicken soup as well. It was making a rather thick and interesting and unusual perfume, Sam decided. It also didn't seem to smell very nice yet.